6,000 kilometers away from there at the edge of Africa in another continent. Oh my god, Faria, you just speak so...
Alright.
Disclaimer. If you're watching this video sometime after the upload, please check the pinned comment first before commenting. Clarifications and corrections will probably be found there.
آره من خب توی فضای موسیقی ایرانی بزرگ شدم. پدرم استاد سنتور و ویولون، معلم موسیقی. خودم هم سنتور میزنم.
خودم سنتور میزنم. اوکی، من خب موسیقی برات بذارم، موسیقی که اسمشون هست پرژن میوزیک و اینا رو یوتیوب. تو فقط بهم بگو خودت که ایرانی هستی، موزیسین ایرانی هستی، بهم بگو اگر به نظر تو چیز دیگه آیا موسیقی ایرانی هست یا نه.
I know that music. I know that music. No way. I used to play. I kind of still play this game. Bro, I used to play Rise of Nations on Roblox. Every single time you would like go to war with someone, that music would play. Bro, I always wonder what that music was. What? That is mad.
این چی؟
این که ارمنی هستن، دودوکه دیگه. این که دیگه اصلا هندی شد. یا مثلا پاکستانی.
ایرانی نیست بازار تو؟
نه.
اگه میگفتم بهت عربیه.
Yeah, that sounds Arabic to me.
خب سلام
What?
مهندس.
That sounds Arabic. I don't know.
تأثیر کردی دیگه تو موسیقی سنتی ایران در تهران. تو چی میزدی؟ ستار میزدی اونجا؟
هم ستار زدم هم اوت. یه هنرمند موسیقی بود که همون کنسرواتوار قدیم بود.
آها.
نه ایرانی نیست.
That music.
یعنی یه حالتی داره انگار احساس می‌کنی که خیلی دیپ تو موزیک شرقی نیست دیگه. یعنی یه چیز مثلا یه حالت برداشتیه از موسیقی شرق توسط یه آدم غربی که خیلی آشنایی نداره با موسیقی شرق. کلاسیک داریم مثلا یه آهنگساز انگلیسی از کتلبی اومده یه چیزی ساخته پرشن مارکت. پرشن مارکت مثلا هیچ ربطی به واقعا بازار ایرانی یا اصلا موزیک ایرانی نداره. یه برداشتی داشته یه مقداری از موزیک ایژیانای مثلا یه مقدار حالت
مثل اون آلاتورکه های موزارت و اینا بودن.
آها آره
تو مایاس دیگه کم.
آره.
یعنی که من برداشت من میدونم وقتی من موسیقی رو گوش میدم حس میکنم که این کسی که اینو ساخت فریم ورک تئوریکش کاملا غربیه.
دقیقاً من اینا که میگم دلیل بر نیست موزیک خوب نیست و موزیک خوبیه، اما چون سوال این بوده که
خیلی قشنگم. منم اینا، یعنی من میگم از نظر هنری خیلی هم زیباست. بیشتر برداشتم اینجا اتنو موزیکولوژیکاله دیگه.
باز یه آهنگساز غربی که مثلا میخواد دودوک استفاده کنه، دودوک کنم تبلا و اینا، هیچ کدوم اصلا به ایران ذاتاً ربط نداره. ساوندش اونجوریه، ساوندش واسه غربی‌ها ساوند خیلی شرقیه. آخه به آهنگساز غربی یه چیزی از بین دودوک و تبلا و نم بلی دنسینگ و همه اینا رو یه جوری با هم دیگه قاطی میکنن که صدای چیز شرقی بده. میدونی اون مثلا حالت رنگ شرقی بهش بده.
رنگ شرقی برای غربی ها بیشتر، چون برای خود ما شرقی مثلا چی گفتی نیلی؟ دوباره بگو.
مثلا این موزیک مثل یه آدم فرانسوی یا انگلیسیه که میخواد فارسی حرف بزنه.
آها، بعد لهجه داره دیگه عملاً.
لهجه داره، بعدم کلماتی که استفاده میکنه شاید جمله بندیش درست هیچ ربطی به فارسی نداشته.
I never like understood this whole idea of oh my gosh an accent oh my gosh bro accent bro I never really understood that because dude, you are going to have an accent if you are speaking a language that isn't your native language. Technically, actually, every single English person has an accent. Even native English speakers have an accent to English. Almost all English speakers technically have their own unique English accent, and it's completely normal. Like there's a lot. Bro, freaking like accents in the UK changes like every freaking mile that you go. You go across the UK, then you enter into America, and then you have so many accents there. And then you go into the freaking Caribbean, the British Caribbean, English Caribbean, then they have their own accents, and it's all just completely normal. Like, I never understood like why like English doesn't do this. Like, people who speak English natively, they don't do this. But other languages I've noticed, they're always like, oh my gosh, you have an accent when you try to speak our language. Yeah. Like, not only that, but studies have shown that based on your native language, I forgot which part of the body, but it's somewhere like in your mouth or whatever. I think it's somewhere in the mouth, but in a nutshell, I'm pretty sure it's the mouth, but I could be wrong. But it's somewhere within that region. But it develops differently. This is why we have accents, bro. Literally. So your body will literally develop differently if you aren't accustomed to other accents. Like, say for instance, right? You don't you just stay in one spot all your life and you're just speaking that one language. Your body's quite literally going to develop around that whole pronunciation. So when you go and try to speak other languages, like, it is quite literally next to impossible to perfect that pronunciation to the teeth. Like, you could do it to a certain extent, but it just, to do it like a native speaker, it's next to impossible, right? Because your body quite literally developed around that native language that you were speaking around, and since you never went around any other type of language or any other type of accent, that's just how you developed. So whenever I hear people say, oh, I'm trying not to have an accent, bro, I'm like, yeah, good luck with that, because you'll always have an accent due to the fact that your body literally developed based around your native language. So, it's just stupid.
دفعه میاد با کلمات ارمنی، بعد اون وسط هندی و بعد اردو و پنجابی و اینا هم داره، یه دفعه وسط عربی. So today we're going to talk about Orientalism and Orientalist music more specifically. Now, what is Orientalism? Orientalism, in its simplest definition, is the East as viewed by the zeitgeist, the hive mind of the collective pop culture of the West. It's not the East as it exists in reality. It's a fictional, alternative, exoticized version of the East that only exists in the mind of Western zeitgeist and Western culture. This image of the East amounts to a bunch of stereotypes, tropes, and cliches, and very limited ones at that. So, for example, the Orient in Orientalism has to be a desert. No other biomes can be accepted within an Orientalist view. Istanbul, which resides in a very wet, lush, green, and rainy region of the world, is often represented as a more desert-like environment.
I never imagined Istanbul to be like that. What? This is how people imagine Istanbul? Bro, people can't just look at a map? What?
The region of Mazandaran in northern Iran is not allowed to exist in Orientalist representations because it's a lush green forest region with snowy mountains and everything. If God forbid one day the Americans decide to have a movie set in Mazandaran, I guarantee you in the universe of the movie they'll turn it into a desert. They'll still have the text saying Mazandaran, northern Iran, but they'll turn it into a desert and they'll film it in Jordan or Morocco. Orientalism often takes the shape of adjusting the real East so that it conforms to the Western expectations of the East. It's the logic of Netflix's latest Alexander documentary. The Achaemenid Persians, who did not have stereotypical turbans and who had straight swords, Netflix goes out of its way to give them curved scimitar swords and recognizable stereotypical turbans. You can just imagine the producers thinking to themselves, yeah, our audience is going to be confused because they're going to expect Persians to have turbans and curved swords. So better to give them things that they didn't have so that they look more Persian, even though the Persians did not look like this. Now, there's a horrifyingly condescending view that Western media tends to have of its own audiences. The idea that Western audiences are so stupid that they cannot ever readjust their preconceived notions of other cultures, and so better to just feed them the same pig feed over and over again, lest they, somehow riot over how confused they are. And of course, this creates a vicious circle of ignorance. I know many fellow Easterners who, get frustrated whenever Westerners just assume that we all live in deserts and have camels and everything. But my thing is, well, how can you blame those Westerners when that's all they've been given over and over again, the same repetitive pig feed of Orientalism? I can't really bring myself to blame most of them because of that. Of course, when we use the term the East, the definition can be very large and nebulous. Historically, you have had Orientalism for China, for Japan, but for the purposes of this video, we are going to limit the definition of Orientalism to the classical expression, the bulk of it, if you will, which is concerned with MENA, the Middle East, North Africa, the Near East, etc. Now, what is Orientalist music? Orientalist music refers to a style or styles of music devised by Western composers used in Western media to represent the East for Western audiences. Now, you may be asking yourself, well, could you give us some examples of instances of Orientalist music in Western media? And that question's premise is flawed. The question rather should be, could you give us examples of Western media that do not utilize Orientalist music? And I would have as hard of a time as finding instances of snowfall in the Sahara Desert. Now, I'm sure snowfall does occur here and there in the Sahara Desert, but you kind of get my point. Orientalist music is not an instance in Western media that happens from here to there. It's not even the statistical majority of representations of Eastern music in Western media. It is the near total exclusive form of representation of Eastern music in Western media. Let me make this very clear. If you think you have an idea of Middle Eastern music in your mind, but you've never heard anything outside of Western media, then we can confidently guess with almost complete certainty that you have most probably never heard 1 second of actual Middle Eastern music in your entire life. Yes, it is this bad. You can name me.
I believe so. Before I even had this channel, yeah, I would say that I was pretty ignorant on music from that region. Very, very ignorant. Very. But I now know better. The Middle East is so diverse that, I don't even know what is what. Before I didn't know better, I just said, this sounds Middle Eastern. Arabic. It must be Arabic. Oh my goodness. But yeah, I know a lot better now.
Any soundtrack, any film, any documentary, and I can guarantee you it is going to be Orientalist, except for very, very minor exceptions that I'm actually going to mention in this video. What about the Medieval 2 soundtrack with the Eastern Civilizations Orientalist? What about the Gladiator soundtrack when they're in Morocco Orientalist? What about the Prince of Persia soundtrack Orientalist? What about this movie Orientalist? The Orientalist.
I believe that.
Orientalist. 4 main principles.
I believe that. I honestly would believe that, yeah.
The first of those is that Orientalist music is completely distinct from actual Middle Eastern music. This is important. Orientalist music is not European-flavored Middle Eastern music. It's not Western composers learning Middle Eastern music and adding their own twist to it. It is Western composers not bothering at all whatsoever to learn anything about Middle Eastern music theory, creating music completely within the bounds of the Western musical framework. The moment a Western musician actually learns Middle Eastern music theory and writes music using those parameters, then by definition, it ceases to be Orientalist music. The second principle is that Orientalist music is the illusion of a Middle Eastern sound to an audience that doesn't know any better by composers who achieve that through a series of quick easily achieved stereotypes that doesn't require them to actually commit to learning actual Middle Eastern music theory. The third of those principles is the hodgepodge effect. Within Orientalist music, instruments, sounds, languages are not placed within their proper anthropological and cultural and ethnic context, but instead they're used in a haphazard manner. You will have pieces of music in Orientalist music that bear the term Persian, but they'll have Indian instruments and Armenian instruments and Arabic lyrics thrown together. It's just one big Oriental mush that you just put together to create some vaguely Eastern sounding thing. And the last of those is treating the East not as a tangible anthropological reality, but rather as an intangible, abstract, exotic other. See, within the logic of Orientalism, when somebody says, I'm going to write Persian music or Persian-themed music, by that, they don't mean I'm going to literally write music about the literal Persians. They're not using the term Persian as an actual anthropological signifier of the Iranic peoples of the Iranian plateau from southwestern Iran. An Orientalist composer, when they say that I'm going to write Persian music, Persian means cobra dancing over the desert sands as the camels go through the sunset, and a seductress is, belly dancing with the veils over her eyes as, the night falls and the sands blow. But this is the logic of Orientalism. Orientalism isn't actually about being interested in the actual Middle East. It's about being interested in a vibe, a vague vibe that really only exists in Western culture and hasn't actually ever really existed in the actual Middle East.
So basically, in a nutshell, it's a cliche.
New epic talking.
Yeah, that's basically what he's saying. It's a cliche stereotype. Even if it's not true, it's still a stereotype. Yeah, that's Orientalism is just a fancy way of just saying that. That's what I got from this.
Viewers who don't know my channel, and so some may ask, well, here you are criticizing musicians that are foreign to a certain culture for inauthentically representing said culture, and yet I'm browsing your channel and here you are representing the music of so many other cultures, so how are you any better? And that's a pretty fair question to ask. Who I am is somebody who has built a channel entirely off of the back of thorough ethnomusicological research and historically informed musical practices. This is not something that's very hard for me to corroborate. You can click on virtually any one of my videos on this channel and go to the pinned comment, and you will find detailed, thorough explanations on why the musical, instrumental, vocal, etc. choices have been made, why they're rooted in a certain ethnomusicological factor, and why they're representative either historically or ethnomusicologically. And perhaps most importantly, I work with people from those traditions. I'm confident in saying that my Balkanic music is authentic because I work on them with Balkanic musicians who let me know if we don't exactly do this or we do that, to the point where many arrangements of Balkanic music that I've arranged have been featured in cultural events by Balkaners themselves on the basis that they were authentic enough, that they're good enough for their own native cultural events. Twice in a row, the Natale di Roma, the birthday celebrations of the city of Rome, have featured my either historically informed reconstructions of ancient Roman music or my ancient Roman themed music that uses Roman instruments, like in front of the Colosseum with the Pantheon and everything. Again, because I work closely with the sources, with the data, and most importantly, with people from those traditions or experts of those traditions. Is the nature of my authenticity perfect on every single minute level? Probably not. But at least I can use the correct instruments for the correct culture. That much cannot even be said for Orientalist music. And here I am speaking on Middle Eastern music, as a Middle Eastern musician from a long line of Middle Eastern musicians myself. So I believe that in this regard, I am not exceedingly arrogant in this enterprise. I do think I have some level of being well placed to speak on this subject. Third and final disclaimer, whenever I make videos in which I talk about how a certain style of music is not authentic to a time or place, the fans of these styles of music, or some of them at least, take it as a personal attack, and their interpretation of my video is, therefore you're saying we shouldn't enjoy this style of music, that we shall feel bad for listening to it. You'll have a hard time finding anyone who enjoys Orientalist music more than I do, especially the old Lawrence of Arabia kind of classic Hollywood sound. I absolutely adore it. Now, while it's undeniable that Orientalist music is fundamentally rooted in the ignorance of Western musicians who don't bother actually putting in the work to understand Middle Eastern music theory, and that it's really nothing more than a bunch of lazy cliches and stereotypes, it still creates a unique sound of its own, and I enjoy that sound for what it is on its own merits. My point here is not to get anyone to stop listening to Orientalist music. I just want people to understand that whilst they may think that they've been listening to Middle Eastern music, they actually haven't been. They've been listening to something completely different. Similarly, I will be very openly critical of some YouTube channels who create Orientalist music, but I'm not criticizing them because their music is Orientalist. I am going to be critical of these channels because they have not properly explained what their music is about. You see, you have this channel, for example, that creates music called Ancient Arabian Music, but their music is software-based. It doesn't use any real instruments. It uses softwares that emulate the sound of instruments, and the instruments that they're using are neither ancient nor Arabian. They're using tars that are Iranian and santurs that are Iranian and Armenian duduks, and throwing them all together. They're not even using them using Middle Eastern music theory or the Middle Eastern musical language, and they just call it Ancient Arabian Music and don't offer any context beyond that. Well, the average person is going to look at that and say, okay, that's what ancient Arabian music sounded like. The most popular examples of Middle Eastern and Arabic music on the internet, if you type Arabian and Middle Eastern music on the internet, the first results you're going to get are from this channel. A collection of music by two Westerners who don't know a single thing about Middle Eastern music theory, who use second-rate softwares instead of actual real Middle Eastern instruments, mixing Iranian and Indian and Armenian instruments in their supposedly Arabic music, and they call it Arabic and Middle Eastern music. I'm not criticizing them for having created Orientalist music. I'm criticizing them for not having promoted it as Orientalist music. I'm advocating for the idea that Orientalism should be an option available to composers. However, as we have established previously, it's not an option. Historically, Orientalist music has been the exclusive norm in Western media. I am not critical of the existence of Orientalism, nor do I wish for its eradication. All I'm advocating for is that in a normal world, a balance of often having actual Middle Eastern music implemented in representations of the Middle East, and from time to time, if composers for a specific aesthetic decide that Orientalism would better serve that purpose, I don't think that's too radical a stance. I have no problem with people listening to Orientalist music and enjoying it on the basis of its artistry. I do have a problem when thousands upon thousands, if not millions of people, as evidenced in the comments of these YouTube videos, listen to Orientalist music thanking those composers for having given them a glimpse of the actual real musical tradition of the Middle East.
Oh my gosh, bro. Yeah, that's the problem. Okay, like I said this before in one of my reactions to one of my Russia reactions, right? And this is why I say, like, hey, I'm a big advocate for Russia, because the West, you know, like, just all this Western rhetoric is just has such a tight grip that so many people just eat it up, and they just believe it all. Don't ask questions. I mean, like, yeah, I honestly, I understand it, bro. I understand it perfectly, bro. That is annoying. That really is annoying. Like, boils my blood, bro. Like, more people need to do this. I don't care what you're doing it for, but more people just need to just call out the Western BS rhetoric, because it is just, it's like an epidemic that no one is talking about, and more people just need to call it out, man. You know what I mean? Like, it's so annoying. Like, you hear this ignorance, bro. This ignorance, bro. That like the other day, and I said this. I think I said this in my previous reaction to the same guy here, or this was another video. No, I'm pretty sure it was the same guy. That other video that talks about this, where we have people that don't understand what it means to be white, bro. Like I said, in the Caribbean, right? In the Caribbean, right? Okay. I grew up in a predominantly black country. Over 90% of the population is black. Predominantly black country. So, you know, I'm talking like dark skin, bro. Dark, actual black people, bro. Right? Actual black people, man. And like me, like I'm tan and shit right now because I live in Florida, and Florida has excruciating heat. But guys, my skin tone is much more lighter than this. Like I said, my DNA reaction, like I probably just have some low-key dominant European genes because my skin tone is a lot lighter than this. If you like, when I go somewhere cold, and you'll see my skin tone just revert back to what it was, and you'll be like, holy shit. Because I remember one time I was talking to an old friend of mine who lives in Macedonia, and I showed her a picture of me, and you know, I was like indoors for like a while, like just a while. I wasn't really going outside, so my skin tone was kind of like removing the tan a bit, right? And you know, my skin looked a bit more lighter, and I showed her that picture, you know, because I was just showing her a picture of myself, and she was just like so used to me having this tan, bro. So when she saw that picture, she was confused. She was like, why do you look more like white? Like your body looks so much more lighter. I'm like, and she was genuinely baffled by that shit, right? So I looked at her and I was like, yeah, because I'm light skinned. Like I've always been light skinned. Like I've always been light skinned. I mean, I even said this, like, if you just watch my videos, like you'll even notice this in my videos. Like some days I look more black and other days I look more freaking light. That's not a coincidence, okay? But anyways, the reason why I'm saying this shit is because due to Western rhetoric, it doesn't matter how light you are, you're just black. Which is like, okay, I get the logic behind it, but I have seen predominantly white people who are still, I'm predominantly black, I know, but I clearly have white genes. Like that's not a debate, okay? But I'm predominantly black. So I'm like, yeah, I'm black, but I'm mixed. Like that's what I always tell people. But I see these predominantly white people who clearly have white skin, but they have a bit of black here. So they say I'm black. Or they have a bit of a tan, so they say I'm black. And I'm like, you would not be called black in my country. Everybody will look at you and be like, you are white. You're mixed. You're white. But you're mixed, clearly. But you're white. Because clearly you are predominantly white. This is all because of Western rhetoric, bro. Oh, you have a bit of a tan on you. Oh, you're black. What? What? Oh, you have like one single black feature on you with a bit of a tan. Oh, you're black. I'm like growing up in my country. I'm like, bro, do people not know like skin tones? Like, it's mind blowing. It's mind blowing. Like I remember the other day, like there's this Albanian woman who works with me, and I looked at her. I was like, I forgot what I was talking about with somebody, but I was talking to someone. I was like, oh yeah, she's white. I was like, yeah, she's white, bro. And freaking other person looked at me. I was like, no, she's not. She's Albanian. Huh? Bro, this lady has the whitest skin, white hair, looks like a white woman. Oh, but because she has a bit of a tan, she's suddenly not white? And that's the crazy part about it, you know. It's just like the slightest bit of tan. Oh, no, she's not. What? Because of stupid Western rhetoric. So yeah, I understand this perfectly. It aggravates me, bro. It aggravates me too much, bro.
The duduk.
Like, more people need to call that out, honestly. Like, not even just for this, not even just for me freaking, meat riding Russia all the time because stupid Western propaganda has completely demonized Russia. Just in general, more people just need to call it out.
The duduk has developed a fetishistic obsession on the parts of Western composers and video game composers of Hollywood and everything when it comes to any soundtrack that has anything to do remotely with MENA or the Middle East. You have documentaries about Morocco and it'll use the duduk. You'll have shots of Arabic countries and it'll use the duduk for some reason. I just need you to understand how literal I am being. I'm not exaggerating. Literally every single Western film that is remotely connected to the East uses the duduk. Literally. I'm not kidding. You can listen to any soundtrack. They all use the duduk, literally, systematically. It is obsessive on the parts of Western composers. Absolutely obsessive. The duduk is an Armenian instrument. And its geographical usage was always very, very limited. It bled over the direct geographical neighbors of that region. So it's pretty much always been limited to the Caucasus, the Armenian highlands, Azerbaijan, and, the Eastern Anatolians. That's pretty much it when it comes to the geographical spread of the duduk. But because of the fetishistic, systematic usage of the duduk in Orientalist music and Western media, people now have gotten this idea that this is the great ultimate Oriental instrument. You want to make music about Iran, use the duduk. And it's just very weird to hear people call it the Arabic instrument when not a single one of the Arab cultures uses it. Not a single one. It used
that
to be that the
is
orchestral
insane.
ensemble
What?
with, the double harmonic major and everything
What?
was what Orientalist music was mostly about. Orientalism shifted towards using actual instruments from the Eastern modal traditions, but using them in a haphazard way that is not at all representative of their actual ethnic and cultural and national associations. So modern Orientalist music will use Indian instruments for Arabic countries and an Armenian instrument for Moroccan music.
At my signal, unleash hell.
This movie moves around a little bit geographically. What I wanted to do is, once we're in Morocco, I wanted it to be really tribal, dirty, gritty. I always wanted to use this one instrument for the Moroccan sequences called the duduk, which is thousands of years old. It's really an Armenian clarinet, would be the easiest explanation.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Morocco, you say Morocco, I think Armenian instrument. Yeah, 100%. Armenia, Caucasus, Asia, therefore, 6,000 kilometers away from there at the edge of Africa in another continent. Oh my God, Faria, you're just being so pedantic and just being
He said it so confidently. I have tears on my eyes right now.
It's still Eastern, it's still,
bro, I have literal tears on my eyes, bro.
It's still, brown. That's kind of the entire point of the thing. Yeah, in this movie, for the scenes that are set in Paris, I've used the sound of a Cretan madura. What the fuck? This is so weird. Why are you doing this? It's so jarring. Why are you doing this? This doesn't sound right. This doesn't sound Parisian. Oh my God, you're overreacting so much. Okay, it's still a European instrument. It still fits. It's still completely appropriate. You're still in Europe. They're all white. It's still really the same thing. It's just Europe. How much of a difference is there between a Scottish person and a Sicilian person? It's literally all the same at the end, isn't it? I don't want to shit too much on Hans Zimmer. I'm happy he used the duduk for that section of the movie. However, I have to recognize, with pure honesty, despite...
Say it for the people in the back to hear. Say it for the morons who want to talk about my European identity. There is no such as a European identity. I had someone called me mad and insane. I said, oh my gosh, bro. How could you say there's no European identity, bro? That's such an insane take. He literally, like in my comments, he literally called me crazy because I said there is no European identity. Yeah, the sky is blue. Okay, the sky is blue. We all know that. Bro, a Spanish person is different from a damn Polish person. And they're both in the goddamn EU. That's where that whole nonsensical European identity. There will never be a united Europe. Europe has been literally trying to kill each other. Okay? Literally, if there wasn't nuclear bombs, okay, Europe would still be slicing each other's throat. And if people want to talk about European identity, oh please, Europeans have nothing in common except for the fact that they're all just slowly becoming racist now.
The fact that I'm the biggest fanboy of this soundtrack, it is my favorite film soundtrack of all time, probably. I just have to recognize that anthropologically speaking, it is quite funny and absurd to hear the duduk in Morocco. And the hard truth and the hard pill to swallow, I think, for a lot of people, is that if Western audiences knew just as much about Morocco and Armenia as they did Scotland, Hans Zimmer would not be able to get away with this, because he certainly would never be able to get away with this. This is unimaginable in Western media. Orientalism is all about getting away with the generalized ignorance that Western audiences in general have towards the Eastern civilization. See, they're not sufficiently familiar enough with the musical cultures of the Middle East to be able to place a certain instrument within its proper anthropological context. Let me give you an example. If I play this instrument, the average Western person, however musically illiterate, will be able to tell you that, well, this is an older kind of instrument. It sounds kind of royal and palacey, and I imagine aristocrats dancing to this. And it's definitely not a hillbilly instrument used by Appalachian rednecks, stereotypically. But if I start using the banjo, on the other hand, the average Westerner is able to tell that this is clearly not some royal instrument used by the ancient royalty of Europe. This is the banjo. It's like a folk American thing. However, on the other hand, I'll play this instrument. The average Westerner who doesn't know anything about the Eastern modal traditions, they can't tell whether this is Iranian or Turkish or Armenian or all of them, whether this is a low-class, folkish villager instrument or whether this is a more high-class instrument, whether it's liturgical or not. So, for example, with this piece of music, Faulan, Princess of Persia, these percussions are completely out of place because they lean very much towards a geographically Southeast Asian usage. Different regions have their own percussions that have their own color and sound that defines the characteristic sound of said culture. So for example, for Persian music or Iranian music at large, you want to use a tombak. Or a daf. These are the main two percussions that we use, especially the daf and the tombak. The daf and the tombak sound completely different from these percussions. As somebody from the region, hearing these Southeast Asian leaning percussions over supposedly Iranian music is equivalent to hearing this over something that is supposed to have a Scottish theme. It's just completely jarring. If you want an Arabic or Greek or Turkish sound, the darbuka drum is what you'd most probably use. That is the most commonly used type of instrument there. And for Southeast Asians, it's that kind of sound. But this kind of sound automatically screams India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, the Desi cultures, rather than actual Middle Eastern cultures, certainly not the Persian culture. And then, of course, the duduk. We can't go without the duduk. The duduk is the one. It is the main one. That is the obsessive one. Then you have this comment that the musicians themselves wrote, which is, "Dear community, we are very happy that so many people like this song. It means a lot to us that the song seems to touch the depth of the soul of many people. That is exactly what we want to achieve with our songs. Touch the heart and take you into another world." We read attentively every comment and apologize to all Persian people that we called the song Princess of Persia, although it belongs more to Arabic music. To be honest, we don't write music according to a certain style of music, but we let ourselves be driven by our thoughts. That's how the song was created. Yeah, and that's exactly my point about Orientalist music. Orientalist music is not driven by any research or emulation of cultures or anthropological reality. It's Westerners who don't really know anything about the Middle East and Middle Eastern cultures, and they just heard certain instruments in Hollywood films and they associate that with a vibe, and they're just going with, I just wanted a vibe of the desert. What's really funny is, in this mea culpa,
I don't watch Hollywood. I don't watch movies that much. I don't. Guys, I don't. Guys, I'm a very introverted person. And you might say, oh, but you can watch movies at home. I don't know, man. Movies just, I find movies to just be a waste of my time, right? I could be doing a whole lot of other productive stuff with that time. And I like spending more time actually watching like informative, educational stuff. Like, I'm not a dull person, and I could play games, I can go hang out, but I just find that to be very, not, like, if it doesn't benefit me, like, why am I doing this, right? Like, it's kind of just really wasting my time. Like, with this, right? I'm watching something and I'm learning here. That's what I like to do. Like I said, like, the whole reason why I created this channel is because, like, I would just watch these types of videos right here and just learn before I had this channel. But, I would have comments, I would have thoughts that I couldn't really talk to nobody with. So I was like, hey, why don't I just put a camera on my face and just express what I think? And that's how you get this channel, right? Because, trying to do that in person, you get nonsense where people around you who are just casuals are just going to say, oh, you think you know everything, or, oh, you think you're so smart. Or you might get people quite literally try and ruin your life just out of pure jealousy because you are more educated on them. That's a true story, by the way, that happened to me. But I don't really go into details on that because, like I said, I don't give losers attention. But, yeah, like, I have this channel now. I'm still watching the types of videos that I watch. I'm still learning, number one. So I'm getting something out of it. And number two, I post this. I didn't get views on it. Might not be a lot, but I still get views, right? I still get some money, right? So it's productive, right? At the end of the day, this is still productive. That's how I view it. If I'm just doing something, I'm just getting nothing out of it, I want to leave. Like, I want to leave, bro. So I don't know. I always used to thought like, oh no, I missed out because I didn't watch a lot of like Hollywood films or whatever, right? And I always thought growing up like, oh my goodness, I missed out. Clearly, like I clearly missed out. No, but yeah, looking at it now, yeah, I honestly didn't really miss out on anything. I'm actually quite glad that I didn't waste my time watching these stupid Hollywood films that I'm so freaking, ignorant. Or I should say that I would have become like so damn ignorant. So yeah.
The writing, although it belongs more to Arabic music. No, it doesn't even belong to Arabic music. This is not Arabic music. It has Southeast Asian percussions. It has a duduk. Even when they're trying to correct themselves, they show that no anthropological awareness or knowledge whatsoever. Santur. The santur is principally used in Iran. It is really an Iranian instrument. Even countries that use the santur, such as Turkey, such as Indians also have a different kind of santur. The Greeks also saduri. They have a different type of saduri. But like even those countries agree that like the santur has a central place in Iranian music that no other musical tradition confers that to it. The most un-Arabic instrument you could imagine is the santur. Hearing a santur over a title that says ancient Arabian music, it would feel like this to a Westerner.
Got me a woman in the Cumberland Gap. Got me a woman in the Cumberland Gap. Got me a woman in the Cumberland Gap. She's got a boy that calls me Pap.
Bro.
Okay, I just absolutely adore this one. Do you hear it? Down. That's like a tapura kind of instrument. I don't know. It's clearly a digital VST, but it is emulating some sort of this kind of buzzing kind of instrument sound. This is Southeast Asian. Okay, this is Indian. Iranians, we don't have anything that sounds like this. I mean, the Arabs, for God's sake, how ignorant can you be of Arabic music? It's like this.
Got me a woman in the Cumberland Gap. Got me a woman in the Cumberland Gap.
Another example would be the Crusader Kings 3 Legacy of Persia soundtrack. It begins as just generic Orientalist music. Duduk. We're not even 8 seconds into the fucking song and there's a duduk already.
Mr. Hollywood composer, your son was boiled alive. And your wife died of grief. Your entire city burned down. Also, you can't use the duduk for your next soundtrack in the Middle East.
Yo!
Yeah, and then you have these, the desert vocals. Again, double harmonic major or Phrygian dominant, one of those two. They're almost the same mode. And the vocal style is very tense, very high-pitched and nasal, which is very much unlike Persian classical vocals. Persian classical vocals are defined almost in contrast to Arabic classical vocals in that they are very much held back. They don't use a very tense vocal texture. If anything, it's a very relaxed, warm vocal texture. And you never sort of, bring out the voice completely. You never let it explode out. It's always held back a little bit.
سل الرماح العوالي عن معالينا واستشهد البيضة الخبر جافينا.
Hey guys, I forgot to tell you this, right? I went on another website to do a DNA test, and now this website was a bit more meh. It's probably the worst of them all. But I just wanted to see if that website would show me anything different. I was just kind of curious to see if Ancestry didn't give me DNA that, I don't know, probably missed something, because like I said, my Ancestry thing may have been a little bit inaccurate. And the other website, although albeit was probably a lot more inaccurate, it did point out that I had 1.2% Arab Middle Eastern DNA, specifically Arab Egyptian DNA. But when I clicked on it and I was looking at it, it said, yeah, Arab Middle Eastern DNA. So I'm 1.2% Arab, according to that website. I don't know. Now, I don't know. I feel like I'm a mix of a whole bunch of things, to be honest, but I just wanted to point that out. I never said nothing about that. I just had that at the back of my head just for a while. Oh my God, I have Arab ancestry. Oh wow.
جدك الغيث إذا الغيث حما يا زمان الوصل بالأندلسي غلاش والخلق يرزقني اللهم صل على المصطفى Kalemdeki yazmayı da sarıya mı boyadın?
Holy moly, my legs, bruh. My leg. Yo, that sounds Eastern European. Oh yeah, Balkan, yeah. That sounds so nice. That sounds real Persian. Persian sounds nice, yo. I like that.
This vocal style is not something that is representative of how we sing in Iran.
One of those musicians made a piece of music called At the Gates of Babylon, epic Persian music, and then he remasters it, the exact same song, still called At the Gates of Babylon, but this time it's epic Arabian music. It's the exact same song. Like it's like on display. The guy just,
No way.
they're all the same.
No way.
They're Arabs, their music sounds the same. Persian Egyptian music, yeah, one of my favorite genres. I also love Estonian Scottish music and Danish Greek music. Also, some of my favorite music. You know, the guy doesn't use Persian and Egyptian literally. The title is literally someone going, Persian Egyptian. You know, two words that kind of vaguely mean Eastern, Oriental, whatever, Egyptian, Persian, you get it. It's the equivalent of me making a weird mishmash of like flamenco vocals with Scottish music and calling it Belgian Lithuanian music with the implicit semiotic gesture that, you know what I mean, you know, Belgian Lithuania, you get it, you know what I mean, those people, the fucking, you know, Europe, the whites, you know, Eiffel Tower, those people, Belgian, Lithuanian, whatever, you get the vibe. Ancient Egyptian music / Persian music, Desert Duduk. Short Arabian-inspired track by me. My dude, ancient Egypt isn't Arabian. Persian isn't Arabian. And the Duduk isn't Arabian. Literally everything about this makes no fucking sense. Within Orientalism, whenever somebody uses the term Scottish, they mean it literally, as in literally anthropologically the Scots. If they use the term Russian or if they use the term Greek, they mean it in a literal manner. But Orientalists, the way they use Egyptian and Persian, they don't mean it in a literal anthropological sense, they mean it in a vague signifier of a vibe.
As the title indicates, this song is a desert, Arabic, Persian-themed song.
Yeah, there's a piece of music I wrote in a French, Hungarian, temperate climate-themed kind of music. Yeah, desert-themed music. Alpine climate music also. Alpine climate. Whew, big fan. Do you see how absurd this kind of approach becomes the moment you try to apply it to Europe? Suddenly, the almost offensive levels of generalization and ignorance come to the surface.
There is something a little bit disturbing, I think, about somebody from that region myself, as an Iranian myself, to see that terms associated with my identity are reduced to nothing more than a bunch of vague vibes to denote simplistic stereotypes and cliches in the minds of outsiders. The very first Epic Talking video that I made, Are Iranian and Arabic Music the Same?, was mainly about the mixed race effect. Now, the mixed race effect is this psychological phenomenon wherein, as human beings, when we've interacted a lot with a category, we have an easy time distinguishing the individual members of that category apart from one another. But the moment we start looking at another category that we're not familiar with, we initially kind of mix them all together, the individual elements, and we have a hard time telling them apart. This inherent psychological limitation of human beings partially explains why Chinese people, for example, who have not spent a lot of time looking at white phenotypes, will tell you all white people kind of look alike, but the moment you tell them all Asians look alike, they go, are you crazy? Or it's why, for example, people who speak Slavic languages will tell you with utter confidence that Russian and Polish sound completely different from one another. But somebody who really doesn't know anything about Slavic languages and who hasn't heard many of them, most of them will tend to tell you, I don't know, like to me Polish and Russian sound the exact same and I cannot tell them apart for the life of me. This psychological limitation is more than natural to human beings. It is inherent to
Yeah, and same thing with Caribbean people. Yeah, Caribbean people and Caribbean accents. People don't know nothing about the Caribbean. And honestly, like we are aware of this in the Caribbean, and we're like, yeah, you know. Although some people do get mad, but many people at this point, it's like, yeah, it's not their fault. We're not gonna blame them. Like, you know, like people don't. Like, I remember when I first came to America, and people heard my accent, and people thought that I was from Africa. Yeah. Or people thought that I was Jamaican. Right? People are like, are you from Jamaica? And it's funny because they literally taught us this in school in Barbados. I remember in like elementary school, right? Primary school, but for the sake of understanding, elementary, I'm just gonna call it that. They looked at us and they said, hey, if you guys ever go to America, they will think that you are from Jamaica. They literally looked at us and told us this like as children, like, yeah, Americans don't really know much about the Caribbean, and like he said, the psychological limitation, the same thing. So they were like, hey, when you step foot on American shores, just expect to be called Jamaican, okay? Like they're all gonna think that you're from Jamaica, and you know, it was like, oh yeah, that's exactly what happened when I came here. Everyone looked at me. I was like, oh, are you from Jamaica? Are you from Jamaica? And it's funny actually because even this psychological limitation is in the Caribbean too, with their own accents. I noticed that a lot of Caribbean people are so like the same thing that he's talking about here is a problem in the Caribbean too. What do I mean by that? A lot of people like the Jamaican accent, right? Westerners, due to the fact that Jamaica is like the most popular Caribbean island, the most well-known Caribbean island, in terms of its like culture and all that, and you know, its influence on a lot of these Western places like America, England, you know, etc., etc. Jamaica is like, yeah, that place, right? That's why everyone thinks that, you know, oh, you're from Jamaica, you sound Jamaican. Yeah, like you said, the Hollywood movies and all that. Yeah, right. Due to Jamaica being the most popular, it's the same exact thing that happened, right? You know, you just have these like extremely popular type of stuff from like one culture, and it just, you know, they're playing Hollywood too much and blah 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 blah. Same thing. I'm not gonna repeat what he said there, but because of this, if you know like the origins of the quote unquote Jamaican accent, I really and truly hate calling it that, but just due to the Western rhetoric, that's just what we call it now, the Jamaican accent. The Jamaican accent, it's literally just Scottish, Irish, mixed with Spanish, and a bit of maroon, right? You don't know who the maroon people are, but they're just like freed slave people who escaped into the forests and jungles of Jamaica and who fought the British and blah 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 blah, right? And you know, the same could be said for basically every other British Caribbean island, or just the Caribbean in general, right? I don't see this problem with the Spanish Caribbean, because again, due to Western rhetoric, you know, whenever someone from the Spanish Caribbean has a Spanish accent, right? Obviously, because they're from the Spanish Caribbean, they're gonna have a Spanish accent. I don't see anyone saying, like, for example, Dominican Republic is a Spanish Caribbean country. Whenever I hear Dominicans talk and they have a Spanish accent, nobody says, oh, you have a Dominican accent. I never hear that. It's either just, oh, you have a Spanish accent, right? But if it's someone from the British Caribbean, right, and you know they have a British accent, it's either, oh, you sound Jamaican, or you sound African. And Caribbean people believe that nonsense too. Like, I see like Caribbean people like arguing one time in the comment section, like, oh, like about like their accents. And I'm like, dude, our accents are literally just European accents. Like, I see Caribbean people say like, oh, our accent is African. No, it's not. Our accents are literally just European accents. Or they'll say like, oh, I remember like someone in my comments the other day, like a while ago, he was like, oh, you have this weird accent where you sound British and American and you sound Bajan. And I replied to him, it took me a second to just look at that comment and read the comment, because I want you to just think about that sentence. You have a British accent with a Bajan accent. The Bajan accent is literally just a variant of the British accent. So when I read this comment, I was like, what? Like, yeah, the same problem. It's the same problem like what he's talking. Again, this is all because of Western rhetoric. So yes, I completely understand where he's coming from in this video. Like, a bunch of just cliche stereotypes, and people just kind of just rewrite stuff just to fit their own narratives and, you know, their own picture, right? Whatever suits them and their own BS imagination, right? You know, it's insane. It is quite literally insane. Like, yeah. That's why I say even Caribbean people believe that own nonsense too. And it makes sense because Caribbean people are obviously dominated by the West. So, you know, British Caribbean people. So I'm not even surprised, right? I'll hear people be like, oh, you have you sound like you're from Dominica. Like, the Dominican accent is just a mixture of British and French. Yeah. Just European. Yeah. Oh, Dominica. Oh, wow. The point that I'm saying is like, they try to make it out like, oh, this is its own thing, bro. Like, it's really not. Like, when you go deeper, it's not. Right? Like the Bajan accent. The Bajan accent is literally just Scottish, Irish, and English from the UK. Just all mixed into one. That's literally the Barbadian accent. Now I've had some people who, whenever I talk nowadays, due to the fact that the British accent has become more of a meme over the years, and I've lived in America for 10 years, I've noticed this transition where whenever I talk to someone, they will look at me and be like, why do you sound British? Whereas before that whole like British accent meme got so popular and whatever, people would say, you sound African, you sound Jamaican, right? More people say, oh, wait, you sound British. What? You know? So yeah. I literally witnessed this in real time happen to me. It's hilarious. Even Caribbean people be like, oh, the Bajan accent, bro. The Jamaican accent, bro. Like, dude. Like, it's just European accents, bro. Like, whoa, my gosh. No way. Seriously? A place dominated by European powers is gonna have European accents? Whoa! You don't say. Again, with the Spanish Caribbean example, whenever people from the Spanish Caribbean talk, people just say, oh, you sound Spanish. Understandably so. But it's not like that for the British Caribbean. No, it's, oh, you sound like this. You sound like that. You sound like the next. Whoa. It's like, these people just can't admit that. And Caribbean people are like this too. British Caribbean people are like this. Like, they can't admit that these black people have literally just adopted these European accents and have assimilated to the point where they're basically just like the Europeans themselves. It's like they just, like, nobody just wants to just, the thought of that is just insane, right? It's just like how the thought of these Orientalist BS music, right? Just like the whole Eastern, Western BS. Like when he talked about Greece, like the thought of Greek being Eastern is just insane, right? You know? So no, I completely understand this perfectly. Like, yeah, 100%. Honestly, like I do, I do, because it pisses me off a lot. Even Caribbean people just can't accept, like, oh, my accent. Like some Caribbean people like are aware of this, but a lot of them are like, what? No, my accent is a Bajan accent. It's nothing European at all. No. Anyways,
who we are. And it's perfectly normal that the collective consciousness of the West has that in regards to the East. Of course, the West will be more intimately familiar with its own direct neighbors and cultural relatives. This is why to most Westerners, if I say our Polish and Spanish culture is different, they're like, what do you mean they're different? Of course, they're nothing alike. It's almost like on a gut level, you feel that they're different. But the moment I tell them, how about Iranian and Arab, suddenly they have a hard time and they often can't tell them apart, again, unless they've actually interacted and studied those cultures. Now, what happens when you put the representation of the Orient into the hands of people who have that inherent limitation, who haven't looked a lot at the East and therefore perceive the East as one interchangeable mush? You're going to get a representation of the East that's one interchangeable mush, and you're going to get people going, whatever, duduk fits in Morocco, it's all the same anyway.
I personally cannot for the life of me tell Chinese and Japanese architecture apart from one another. I look at them and I'm like, as far as I'm concerned, they're the exact same thing.
I can tell them apart.
However, I am cognizant of the fact that if I spend more time looking at that architecture and studying it, I will be able to tell that they are as individually distinct from one another as German architecture is distinct from French architecture, a distinction that I can very easily make because I have spent more time looking at European architecture. Having the mixed race effect is perfectly fine. That makes us human. But dismissing other cultures on the basis that I can't tell the difference, therefore you are overreacting, that's not being human. That's being a fucking cunt. Orientalism thrives on and is literally fueled, exists solely and primarily due to the generalized ignorance of mass audiences regarding foreign cultures. So what I'm going to do is, I am going to write a piece of music in an Orientalistic manner. So the first thing that I'm going to do is that I'm going to make a piece of music about the ancient Persian Empire. And so I want that Persian sound. So I'm going to use an instrument that like sounds Eastern. It has that like Eastern, like, you know, like that, you know, Middle Eastern, like Arabic kind of thing, because it's the Persian Empire. So we want that kind of Arabic sound. Oh yeah, that's good. That it has like that Arabic like thing. That has like, that sounds Persian. There's this thing, like this instrument. It's like that the Middle Eastern like desert thing, like in all the movies. It's called the duduk. Like that is so Persian, desert, because that's the thing. I want to make a piece of music about, I want to make a Persian piece of music, and Persian music is about getting like that Arab, you know, like desert kind of vibe, you know, like that, like you want that vibe, you know, the camel, you know.
Yo, shit, bro. Oh shit. Oh, I laughed too hard that my throat. I freaking tickled my throat.
You know, the Allahu Akbar, tribal, you know, primitive. That's it. We've got Persian music on our hands, guys. am going to write a piece of music that is supposedly going to be European in nature with the same kind of method that Orientalist Western musicians use for Middle Eastern cultures. So we are going to make a piece of music called William Wallace epic Scottish battle music. I want that Scottish vibe, you know, that European vibe. You know what I mean? This instrument, I want that instrument too, because we want like that authentic, you know, like Western kind of feel. So we're gonna use this one. I hear that instrument and I think of like Scotland and everything. And then for the vocals, I want that vocal style, you know, that like the Europeans use in their music. This one. This. Opera, whatever, I don't fucking care. Like that vocal style, it's gonna give us that Western. Oh, and then this instrument, the Western instrument, this one. Hear this, and you're like, William Wallace. Yeah, and then I want that way of singing that they have, like the Europeans. What are they called? The alcoholics, the vodka people, whatever. They're all fucking Europeans anyway. It doesn't really matter. Europeans have this style of singing.
Dali ke mezeme mamo iline mezima.
Yeah, because like I hear it and it just makes me think of like Charlemagne, William the Conqueror, like, because it's European. William Wallace, epic Scottish Western music.
Yo, this dude got jokes, bruh. Oh my God, I'm crying.
This has been a fruitful exercise in empathy. I understand, I sympathize with the fact that if you're not a Middle Easterner and you listen to Orientalist music, you might be thinking to yourself, I don't know, it works fine for me. It's not like this absurd, jarring thing. Well, yeah.
Ooh, that was so funny.
In order to have a perceptual experience that actual Easterners have. But I need you to understand, this William Wallace example that I created is not an exaggeration. It is literally how Orientalist music sounds like to us. That same level of completely nonsensical mixing of cultures and everything is literally how it works within Orientalism. And this opens up an interesting philosophical notion. You're dealing with a form of artistic expression that works for everybody except the people that it represents. A form of art that is jarring only to the people that it represents. Food for thought.
First and foremost, among all the features of Orientalist music, its beating heart, the beating drum at the core of all of it, the main crutch of Orientalist music, is the over-reliance on the double fucking harmonic major. It's very recognizable, and it is the go-to series of notes to refer to the East and to the Orient in the minds of people. In order to understand why it's such a stereotype, we have to understand the nature of the Eastern modal traditions. We call these traditions the Eastern modal traditions because modality and the usage of modes is their primary factor.
Okay, so I'm not going to go into too much detail of what a mode is. I will tell you to go watch this video in which I explain in more detail what modes are. Basically, to keep it very simple for this video, a mode is a specific configuration of notes. If you look at a piano and you use this specific configuration, this specific selection of notes, it gives you the major. This specific configuration, the minor Dorian. This specific configuration, the minor Aeolian. And then by the end of the Middle Ages, you have the rise of the harmonic minor, and you have a few others. But for the most part, European music, in its mainstream, was limited to minor, major, and like 2 or 3 others, so upwards of 5 basically at most. Again, in the mainstream, I know there have been experimentals, I know about Harry Partch and everything. We're talking about mainstream generalities of Western music for most of its history. On the other hand, the Eastern modal traditions are all about having in each tradition 30 modes, 40 modes, 50 modes. That's why they're called the Eastern modal traditions, because it's having so many modes that is the literal defining trait. This is helped, of course, by the fact that we have more notes than Westerners do. Westerners, since the Middle Ages, have divided the octave in 12 parts. They've spliced the octave into 12 notes. We splice it into more than 12 notes, at least 24. That's what we call microtonality. So the moment you have more notes, this exponentially expands the configurations that you can have. Now you have even more configuration. So basically, the Eastern modal traditions are all about having many modes.
The great strength of Middle Eastern music, its greatest quality, its greatest achievement, the thing that makes it what it is the fact that it has so many modes, such a diversity of modes, from Rast to Segah to Bayat, all these different modes, some of them microtonal. That means Westerners can't even play them. Westerners don't even know how to sing them without proper training, because these are notes that literally do not exist in Western music theory. And within this panoply of so many different modes, there is one tetrachord, this tetrachord. Which is the basis for a mode called Hijaz and its close parent, Hijazkar. You also have the Phrygian. The Phrygian and Hijazkar are 2 modes that have become the go-to representatives.
That sounds like the language. I thought you was talking about the language for a second.
Orientalist music has a fetishistic obsession with this Hijaz tetrachord and with the Phrygian mode. Orientalist music is defined by the fact that it cannot even conceive of Middle Eastern music beyond the usage of the double harmonic major. The entirety of the vast panoply of so many different modes used by the Eastern modal traditions is boiled down to this one single fucking singular mode of double harmonic major.
Hello, Mr. Hollywood/video game music composer. I was sent here to be your consultant on Middle Eastern music. So I just wanted to know, so the first scene for the movie, how does the melody go?
Shit.
I wanted the music to sound Middle Eastern. So the melody goes like this.
Ugh. Something's in my freaking eye. What the hell?
Okay, interesting choice. Hijaz, yeah, the Hijaz tetrachord, sure. That's a mode that we have. It's heard relatively often in our music. Kind of a specific mode to choose. It's not really a central one, but it is there. We do use it, so sure. How about the next scene, the scene after that, when the hero meets the girl?
Bro.
Okay, Hijazkar again, that's interesting. How about, if I may, I could suggest to you different modes of Middle Eastern music, because as you know, the entire point of Middle Eastern music is that we are the musical tradition with the most modes. Like, that's literally what our musical tradition is about, right? So, for example, you could go for Bayat or Shur. That is the most widely used traditional mode. It's the minor, but the second note of the minor scale is a half flat, a microtonal half flat. So it goes like this. Hear that sound? It's never heard in Western music, and it gives it a beautiful sound. You can go.
Yeah, it sounds nice.
I could go like that, but I'd rather go like this. Sure, you can just stick to Hijaz Kar for this one too if you want. Well, now for the next scene, what will be interesting, I would suggest going for a variant of shur. It gives you a minor flavor, but that's not quite minor, and it's not quite like shur or bayat that we just saw, so it goes like this. It's almost the Western minor, but I think I'll rather go like this. Okay, Hijaz Kar again. How about this one could be interesting. This is a microtonal mode that is really, really microtonal. That it's almost like you can't put your finger on whether it's happy at some moments, but then it goes like dark. Like here it's it sounds kind of happy, but then you go down the aye, or I could just go like this. I don't get it,
bro.
The musical tradition that has the most modes out of any other, and you just what is your fetish with this one mode?
I need you to understand this. The double harmonic major / Hijaz Kar is not the most widely used one in the Middle East. It's not even the second most widely used one or the third widely used ones. There is a dozen modes that we use statistically more frequently. Arabs, Armenians, Turks, Iranians, you name it. We use those modes like segah, like ras, like bayat. Yes, Hijaz Kar and the double harmonic major exist, but not to the degree where people think. People have now gotten this idea outside of the Middle East that all of our music is based in Hijaz Kar and everything, and they hear Hijaz Kar and double harmonic major and they go, oh, it sounds Egyptian and deserty, thinking that this is the main factor of our music. This is the equivalent of going to Italy and being like, oh yeah, Italian cuisine. Oatmeal. You know that oatmeal is the Italian cuisine thing. It's ridiculous. Now, of course, they do have oatmeal. They eat oatmeal in their food. It would be so strange and weird for oatmeal, for some reason, to mistakenly be perceived by non-Italians as the go-to representative of Italian cuisine and culture. It's just kind of weird. And somebody once said to me, he's like, well, you know, Hijaz Kar is like pizza. Pizza is also an Italian stereotype. I'm like, no, it's not an Italian stereotype. The Italians do promote pizza as their national dish. Now, of course, it's stereotypical that they eat nothing but pizza. There's many dishes outside of pizza, but pizza is their national central dish along with spaghetti and many others. Whereas if you start listening to Iranian music, you may go through 10 hours of Iranian music before you finally hear that fucking Hijaz tetrachord. You will hear literally the major scale more often. We use the major scale, we have it in the Middle East, and we use it way more often than we use this goddamn mode.
I need this to be absolutely clear. When I say that Orientalist music is obsessed, absolutely fetishistically obsessed with the double harmonic major and the Phrygian mode, like exclusively those two, and never, ever, ever any other Middle Eastern modes, ever, never. Like it is, I'm dead ass. It's at this level, it's that bad. You will never, ever hear any Middle Eastern mode outside of these two, Phrygian and double harmonic major. You have the hours upon hours of Arabian music and Middle Eastern music that the Fischer brothers have written on YouTube. And their music, by the way, a lot of it is very beautiful. It harkens to that old Hollywood sound. Literally, you can listen to all their hours of music. It's literally just Phrygian and double harmonic major. Literally. They never venture outside of that even once. Any of those epic Arabic battle music, Arabian battle music, World Music FM, Antti Martikainen, Adrian von Ziegler, all of them, double harmonic major Phrygian, Harry Gregson Williams, double harmonic Phrygian, Hans Zimmer, double harmonic Phrygian, you name any composer, it's that bad. It's not a case of, oh, it's that bad. Orientalist music can literally not conceive of Western music outside of only those two. It reduces the musical tradition with the largest amount of modes in the combined history of humankind to only two, and really mostly one, which is the double harmonic major, and then secondarily the Phrygian mode. You have like 100 others, and you just go for this one over and over again when you have so many other different sounds and emotions. And why this one mode? We're gonna look at why right now.
Orientalist music is written by Westerners who don't know Middle Eastern music theory. If they knew Middle Eastern music theory, then it wouldn't be Orientalist music. And their goal is to create a form of music that automatically sounds exotic and foreign and alien and Eastern to their mainstream Western audience. That's easy to do with the Middle Eastern modes because most of them are microtonal. Microtonality does not exist in Western music theory. Microtonal modes are so alien and unusual from a Western perspective. That you can automatically get that foreign, alien, exotic vibe that Orientalism needs.
So why don't these Orientalist musicians use microtonality? 3 reasons. The first is that they are Western trained musicians, and somebody who is exclusively trained in Western music theory doesn't know how to use microtonality. Now, I know a lot of Western trained musicians who think they understand microtonality, and they're a lot like Italian Americans who think they're Italians. And whenever they come to us Middle Easterners and try to prove that they understand microtonality, it's like that cringe moment when you see Italian Americans trying to show to Italians that they're just as Italians as them.
I had the worst experience of my life with someone like this. I'm not going to say the story, but oh my God, I'm sorry, bruh. Like that just gave me PTSD. I met someone who claimed that they were from something else, and it turned out that they weren't. I don't tell people that story. I could tell that story because it'll make a bunch of sense. It is literally related to this topic and what he's talking about right now. But that story is just so embarrassing for me that I just don't tell people it. I just don't. I just don't. But holy shit, bro, that
is literally antithetical to
PTSD that I got from that, bro.
Whereas Middle Eastern music is literally rooted entirely in the usage of microtonality. The second reason is because most Western trained musicians tend to detest the sound of microtonality. It's so off-putting to them.
Oh my God, bro.
It just sounds so bad to their ears. And the third reason is because most Western instruments cannot even accommodate the usage of microtonality. Guitars and everything, for example, do not have enough frets in order for you to be able to play microtonal notes. Basically, it all amounts to they're Western musicians, and because Western music theory is so antithetical to microtonality, well, they're not going to use it because they don't even know how to use it, they don't like the sound of it, and even if they wanted to use it, their instruments do not allow them to use it.
So microtonality is out of the picture. It's not a possibility. So what do? There are modes in the Middle East that the Westerners also have. See, every mode that exists in Western music also exists in Middle Eastern music theory. We have the major scale. We have the minor scale. We have every scale that exists in Western music theory. We have it in the East too. So why don't they use those? Well, the problem is because those modes are also used in the West, it's way harder to get them to sound exotic and foreign. In order to make a major scale melody sound foreign and exotic, you really need to know a lot about the accent with which Middle Eastern instruments are played. You need to learn how those instruments are articulated. But again, because they're Western musicians limited to Western music theory, they don't know how to articulate instruments in a Middle Eastern manner. And so even if they try writing modes that Westerners also have, it just ends up sounding like Western music. Somebody who grew up in Eastern modal music theory can easily take a melody in the Dorian minor, something that is as Western as it gets, and make it sound completely Middle Eastern, like Severin Ben Seni, which for the most part is often played in a very, very close analog to the Dorian mode of Western music.
This requires effort. It requires an amount of effort to learn those authentic articulations and techniques and to get that sound out. So the modes that are accessible to Westerners, because they're classically Western modes are also out of the picture. So what are you left with? You're left with Phrygian, and most importantly,
Bro, every time he says Phrygian,
harmonic major and Phrygian are not microtonal modes.
I keep thinking he's talking about the Frisian language. Not because he's saying Phrygian so quick that I'm thinking he's saying Frisian but with an accent.
To be played on Western instruments, and also they don't exist in Western music at all. Therefore, the moment you use the double harmonic major tetrachord, even without Eastern instruments, even without any knowledge of their ornaments and techniques and their way of playing, you will automatically get a foreign sound. Simply because they don't have that in the West, therefore it'll automatically sound exotic and foreign and otherworldly. And it has the added advantage of not being microtonal, therefore easily accessible on Western instruments. This is why the double harmonic major and the Phrygian to a secondary extent have become the ultimate crutch without which Orientalist music cannot survive. Because Orientalist music will never dare even try to make an effort to understand the vast, incredibly deep complexity of the Eastern modal traditions. The reason the double harmonic major has become the main pillar of Orientalist music is simply because it is a fast, cheap cheat code that doesn't require any effort whatsoever. I can just go up and down this tetrachord over and over again on a piano without putting in any effort understanding how their instruments are played, the techniques, the ornamentations, the music theory, and it'll already sound Middle Eastern and exotic just like that.
Now, there are many criticisms that can be levied against Hollywood soundtracks and Hollywood composers. They
Holy crap, my legs hurt. Oh my god. Damn, sitting down here for a long ass time. Oh, that does something to you.
Major and Phrygian, you know, they mishmash instruments in a nonsensical, stereotypical way. However, one thing can be given to them. They use real instruments, at least. Usually they'll get real Armenian duduk players to play melodies that, you know, still end up sounding Orientalist because they constrain those Middle Eastern musicians within a Western musical framework, within Orientalist melodies that are not written the way Eastern melodies will be written, but at least the instruments are real. The same cannot be said, however, for this YouTube Orientalist genre, this whole epic Arabic battle music, Persian battle music, ancient Egyptian duduk kind of music on YouTube that has unfortunately become the dominant form of representation of Eastern music on YouTube. If you type Middle Eastern and Egyptian music on YouTube, the first examples are going to be from Western Orientalists who don't know anything about Middle Eastern music theory. And the worst part is, most of them have never put their hands on an actual Middle Eastern instrument in their lives. Their music, this whole genre...
There's a bunch of Middle East music that, honestly, bro, like, this is why I said, I would love to visit the Middle East. I've said that before. The Middle East has so much that would be awesome to experience, you know? I genuinely believe so. But the conflicts, it's just like the conflicts, man, really just holding me back, you know, just unfortunately, you know, it's unfortunate. It's very unfortunate.
Genre is entirely
honestly
and completely software based. You don't need to believe me, they themselves list all the softwares that they've used. This, coupled with their complete disinterest in actually delving into actual Eastern music theory, their reliance on Western music theory, on stereotypes, on cultural mishmash of instruments, explains why their music sounds the way it does. Because a physical instrument allows you to articulate the instrument in many ways, but a software can only go so far. And that's what we're going to look at right now. The problem of articulation, or the lack of articulation, really. Articulation is the way you use a certain instrument. The violin is a great example of that. The violin is one of the most versatile instruments to exist. Depending on how it is
Violin
played,
is
it
sick.
can give you a typically Irish sound, or it can give you a typically Middle Eastern sound. Those are the same instrument, but the way that they're articulated confers that ethnic grit to it. And in order to understand articulation with instruments, you have to be used to a certain culture. The way cultures play their instruments creates different effects. This is why the balama, which historically was played by the Greeks for a few centuries before they went out of fashion recently, when the Greeks play the balama, it sounds very different from how the Turks play it. Articulation is an important detail of ethnic authenticity that requires study and familiarity. I was working on a piece of music recently where I asked a musician to record the duduk for me. However, when I asked the musician,
I can't take that shit seriously anymore, bruh. Yo, anytime I hear that word duduk now, I just think of this dude just making fun of that. I just can't, bro. I can never view that the same way anymore. Anytime I hear duduk, it's just such a meme now.
The duduk for me, I said it's an Azerbaijani themed piece of music, and he said, okay, so I will play it with an Azerbaijani accent. This is something that is completely lost on musicians like Antimartikyan. And the way they articulate their instruments, they just go up and down the double harmonic major scale.
That is mad. I'll play it for Azerbaijani at what? Yo.
If you know anything about actual Middle Eastern music, it's that what defines our way of playing music is primarily the ornamentation. Ornamentation is not even
I can't get over that.
The term ornamentation when speaking about Middle Eastern music, because our music isn't ornamented. The ornamentation is the music.
All right, let me chill out. I need to chill out, bro.
If you listen to Iranian piano styles of playing music, it sounds a lot more like this.
I like that. Oh, that's so beautiful sounding. I like that.
Think of the Baroque era for those who are more familiar with Western music. If you listen to old Baroque recordings, all those ornamentations and everything.
Bro, they used to teach us this so much, like, oh, Baroque in school, bro. Like, I never cared. I never cared about that, honestly. I never cared.
Composers, what they do, they buy those virtual instruments, Middle Eastern instruments, and they're just, oh, okay, Middle Eastern sounding instruments, and it says tar, sure, and then they start doing shit like this, like. It takes on a completely different dimension of its own, and it's this dimension of articulation that allows Middle Eastern music to sound Middle Eastern even when it's using modes that the Westerners are using.
This video is honestly so insightful though, like I cannot lie. Like, honestly, probably had I never watched this video, I probably would have been a lot more ignorant about like Middle Eastern music, bro. Like ooh wee. I'm glad I did. I'm honestly glad that I watched it.
You can use the major fucking scale. and make it sound Middle Eastern if you know how to articulate instruments in a Middle Eastern manner.
But most Westerners don't know how to do that. I do agree though, but the articulation is a lot different. I do hear the difference.
This YouTube Orientalist genre exclusively uses softwares, no real instruments. This music claims to represent a musical tradition whose primary form of expression is complex articulation, and it produces this music using softwares, a tool that can't even produce basic articulation.
Now the question must be asked, how did the duduk end up becoming the go-to Orientalist instrument to represent all of the Middle East? Well, the reason is simple. This is due to the circular associations of pop culture. Pop culture will develop associations and will refer to those same associations. This is something that is extremely important to understand. Orientalism is never rooted in emulating the actual traditions of the East. Orientalism is rooted in emulating previous incarnations of Orientalism. I would know because I was asked multiple times to compose projects for documentaries or independent video games, small short films, nothing on the scale of Hollywood, obviously, but the same cultural reflexes apply. And whenever I was asked to do that, they would tell me, can you write Iranian music for us? And I'm like, sure. And I deliver them a soundtrack that's actually Iranian. And, you know, the first few times I did this, every time it was like, what is this? That's not what we wanted. I'm like, what do you mean? You wanted Iranian music? That's Iranian music. And they were like, no, that's not Iranian music. That's Iranian music. That's what we wanted. We wanted you to write, like, you know, Persian soundtrack music. Like, why doesn't it sound like the Prince of Persia soundtrack? Now, whenever somebody asks me to write a supposedly Iranian-themed soundtrack, I actually tell them, first off, I want you to realize that what you probably think, what you're probably asking me to do is not what is actually Iranian music. People have this idea that when Hollywood composers are tasked with writing a soundtrack about a foreign culture, that their first reference is to go out there and study the actual music of those cultures. No. Hollywood soundtracks and video game soundtracks, their first reference is previous soundtracks. Orientalism always refers to previous incarnations of Orientalism. For example, in my previous video where I talked about the duduk and how it is closely related to Rome also in Western media. So the duduk, by the way, in Western media has a dual association of anything desert, ancient, and also for some reason like classical Rome, I think because of Gladiator. And then a lot of people were like, well, I think Hans Zimmer used the duduk because he wanted to emulate the sound of the Greco-Roman aulos. So why didn't he use the aulos? I'm sure that the moment I say that the duduk is used in Kingdom of Heaven and it doesn't actually belong there, somebody's going to be like, well, you know, Kingdom of Heaven features Salahuddin, and Salahuddin was Kurdish, and the Kurds in Eastern Anatolia, they used the duduk. Therefore, this is what brought Harry Gressing Williams to use the duduk. I mean, we are to expect that Hollywood, with its track record of cultural representation, somehow has the most historically informed, ethnomusicologically informed instruments on such a level that they're using these third-level associations that require ethnomusicological knowledge. Bulgarian choirs were used in Troy because the composer thought it sounded ancienty and cool and whatever. The duduk is constantly used because that's the Western Media Association. That's all there is to it. I'm sorry to break it to fanboys of Hollywood soundtracks. This is how Orientalism started. How Orientalism started was that somewhere in the 1800s probably, Westerners who were naturally ignorant about a foreign culture began haphazardly representing that culture without truly understanding what it is. And then the next generation of people who want to refer to the East, well, they're immersed in Western culture. So what they have access to is Western representations of the East. So they just refer to that. And on it goes. Western media always refers to previous incarnations of the East in Western media instead of actually breaking that vicious circle and going outside and actually looking at the East. This is why Orientalism has survived to this day.
یه لحظه گوش بده کارم و بهم بگو اگه به نظر تو حالت ایرونی داره یا نه.
باشه.
همون اولین ثانیه‌اش اون تنبک باز سطح قشنگ آدم رنگ ایرونی رو حس میکنه. آره یعنی تو مثلا اون قبلی ها رو فرستاده بودم حس میکردیم هر دو تامون که این آدما اصلا هیچ ریشه‌ای ندارن تو موسیقی خود سنتی یا اصلا کلا شرقی مدال یا ایرونی. حتی این آدم حس میکنه که کاملا از یه بیس ایرونی شروع کرده موسیقیشو بنویسه.
A Westerner wrote and made this.
One of my favorite passages in the Medieval 2 Total War soundtrack by Jeff Van Dyke, one of my favorite composers, somebody who very much, goes for Orientalist stereotypes and tropes, still has this passage. I mean, this is absolutely perfect. This is flawless. You would absolutely hear this in Egyptian classical music, for example. It's some microtonal mode. I don't know exactly what mode it is, but it is definitely microtonal. And it is being played on those portamento strings that give it that very recognizable Middle Eastern string kind of quality. And it sounds literally out of something that you would hear Fairuz singing, for example. It's absolutely perfect. It's brilliant. Now, the thing is, the rest of the soundtrack very much goes for Orientalist tropes and everything, but my point is, Orientalism is a spectrum. And earlier we were talking about the Crusader Kings DLC soundtrack. Absolutely perfect. This is Persian classical music. This is literally Persian classical music. You have a santur articulated generously with ornamentation and everything. You have a microtonal melody. You have a tar joining in, and you have a tombak drum. Literally everything about this is perfect, absolutely perfect. Of course, the composer says that he collaborated with Iranian musicians, and I am of the opinion, I'm just gonna guess that the more Orientalist sounding parts of the soundtrack are more the composer's work, and all of this was him pretty much just letting his Iranian team loose. Edgar, puis tu m'avais envoyé genre un morceau à un moment donné. T'as dit comme écoute, j'ai composé de quoi dans un style iranien. Puis j'ai écouté ça, puis j'étais comme wow, Chris, y'a pas de duduk, c'est pas la double harmonique majeure, c'est pas orientaliste et tout. Comment t'as fait pour être aussi authentique que ça, que moi, un Iranien, j'étais comme hey Chris, c'est iranien.
Ben d'abord merci beaucoup. C'est vraiment juste en écouter le plus possible. Ouais. Tu fais un copy-paste, de copier le plus possible, d'être le plus accurate possible. Genre. Tu fais ça un bout de temps, puis après ça, tu développes ton propre son, puis tes propres twists à toi, personnellement. C'est un des Daska, mettons, j'avais étudié les notes des modes eux-mêmes, les différentes fonctions, mettons, ça c'est la tonique, mettons, ça finalise. D'ailleurs, comme une des pièces que je suis en train de faire, d'ailleurs, mettons, on est en Sega, Puis ça, c'est la root. Ça, c'est la quinte, mettons. La quinte, elle peut varier d'un quart de ton, tu sais.
Ouais.
Fait que, mettons, je pourrais faire comme... Ou, mettons... Ça, avec la théorie, justement, j'ai appris qu'on pouvait twister la note, mettons, de ça à ça, genre.
Ouais.
D'un quart de ton.
Je pense qu'il y en a qui diraient que genre, oh non, mais là, t'en demandes trop aux compositeurs occidentaux, il y a personne qui peut écrire de la musique iranienne comme un Iranien, et puis, bullshit, si, genre, je pense que c'est pas vrai. C'est pas vrai, c'est faisable. Faut juste s'appliquer, genre.
Okay. He talks about just listening to it just a lot to the point where your brain just like knows. Bro, real shit though, that's like the tactic that I actually used. Not even used, I'm still using. Like you could use that to learn languages. That's literally what I'm using. To just like, due to the fact that I have no one around me that can I can speak in my target language to, you know, all I do is I just sit there. I don't even really speak to myself at all. I remember one time I was like speaking to someone. I was like, oh, I have an accent, blah, 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 blah. And people were like, oh, you accent, blah, blah. Like, what I talk about at the start of the video. So I was talking to this person in my target language, and the person was like, what? You don't have an accent. You sound just like a native speaker. I was like, oh, really? I don't? And he was like, yeah, you don't. I was like, oh, okay, that's interesting. I thought I did have an accent. Other people claim that I did, but you said that I don't. I don't know. But input is a very powerful tool. Is all that I'm saying. Like, input is very, very powerful, right? Like, most of the time, I don't speak. 99% of the time, I don't speak in my target language. All I do is I just sit there and I just hear it over and over. I'm talking like literally what he did there. Like, you do something over and over and over and over. Like, your brain is literally like a master of just that type of stuff. Your brain just masters it like over time. Okay, it'll just get to the point where when you just hear something wrong, you'll be like, oh, what the hell? That's not what I'm used to hearing. You know, like your brain is really good at that type of stuff. Just pattern recognition over and over and over. And that's all I did in my target language. I just sat there and just listened to the same sentences over and over and over. I freaking, because most people, when they talk about like language learning, they're like, oh, you have to speak to yourself. You have to speak to yourself. You have to speak to yourself, or you won't remember. And no, not with me. I barely speak to myself, and I have pretty good memory, okay, of words, sentences, and that's just from just sitting down, reading a book or a dictionary, or just using my apps, saying sentences out loud over and over and over. Like, I just input it, okay, I learn it, then I hear it over, and I'm like, okay. And you literally just do that for a long time, and bam, like, you're golden. So, like, literally, like what he did there. So honestly, you could use that for anything, for a lot of things, like not just language, but musical instruments and perfecting the perfect sound. But you have to be patient. It takes a long time. It's tedious as hell. It takes a long time. Trust me, it takes a long time before your brain starts to be like, okay, I'm getting it now. You know what I mean?
C'est tellement nice parce que un des chapitres importants dans la vidéo, là, c'est l'importance de l'articulation. Peux-tu nous expliquer comment, en fait, tu utilises ton doigt, genre?
Ouais, j'utilise mon doigt, je laisse légèrement l'ongle pousser, puis dans le fond, c'est vraiment le setup. Traditionnellement, si tu utilises, c'est comme tu gardes tes mains de même, puis tu fais juste bouger ton index de même. Fait que moi, j'ai comme repris ça.
Bruh. That's impressive. That's some impressive. That's impressive, bro.
J'ai modifié mon sas aussi pour que justement ça soit pas doublé non plus.
Ouais.
Cette corde-là soit pas doublée, fait que ça sonne plus comme un setup.
Comme un setup, ouais.
So as you can see, there's something very different between writing Orientalist music and actually bothering to learn actual Oriental music. On one hand, you have Edgar, who buys books, learns the actual Dasgah music theory of Persian classical music, buys an actual real physical instrument and plays them using techniques that render these instruments in the traditional way that we use in Iran. You have Jeff Van Dyke actually using real string sections and incorporating actual Middle Eastern modes and not just the same double harmonic major and Phrygian mode. You have the composer of the Crusader Kings 3 DLC working closely with Iranian musicians in order to incorporate actual Persian classical music using real instruments, real articulation, real complex microtonal modes. And then you have people not bothering to learn anything about actual Middle Eastern music theory, buying softwares, producing music on those softwares that are basically second-rate imitations of Middle Eastern instruments, not even bothering to put those instruments in their proper ethnic or national or cultural context, and then slapping the terms Persian or Arabian on them. That's why I call Orientalist music the babrabi, babrabu, mamma mia, pizzeria of actual Oriental music, in the sense that the similarity between Orientalist music and actual Middle Eastern music is the same as the similarity or the distance between babrabi, babrabu, mamma mia, pizzeria, Mario 64, Lamborghini, and the actual Italian language.
Lamborghini.
On one hand, you have putting in the work of understanding an actual real-life language, a complex set of grammar and syntax and phonology that arose organically within an anthropological context over the course of 2,000 years. And on the other hand, you have a bunch of tropes and cliches and stereotypes that just immediately sound like that thing, but it's a gross exaggeration of that thing. I won't hide to you that it's quite frustrating to see comments of people praising these songs for and thanking the composers for telling them, oh, thank you so much for giving me an insight into how Middle Eastern music sounds like, because this is the equivalent of clicking on a YouTube video that is titled The Italian Language, and then somebody going, a Lamborghini, a mamma mia, a pizzeria, babrabi, babrabu, and people going, oh, thank you, now I know what the Italian language sounds like. Thank you for thank you for putting in the work of learning to speak Italian. I'm not trying to shit on Orientalist music, but I'm trying to show it for what it is. Orientalist music is undoubtedly beautiful from an artistic point of view.
You're doing God's work. You're doing God's work. Ignorance is an epidemic, and people need to just call this shit out. I hope this guy doesn't stop. He needs to keep going. He needs to keep going. Fact, not an opinion. He needs to keep going. Because I'm tired of this ignorance, bro. But he's only one person. You know, there's people like us, and I say us because I try my best to counter ignorance as best as I can myself, but you know, there's only so much that we can do.
However,
honestly,
just because we enjoy a piece of art does not mean that we need to find mental gymnastics to elevate it above what it actually is. Enjoying a piece of art does not automatically confer upon it the prestige of deep antiquity and anthropology and tradition. First, I want to start by describing the obvious, which is how Orientalism sucks for the people represented by Orientalism. And the most obvious reason is because it completely misrepresents our cultures and who we are. It reduces us down to a bunch of tropes and stereotypes and cliches without actually putting in any work respecting the complex anthropological, ethnomusicological, cultural, linguistic factors that define who we are. Now, you will have noticed that I was a bit highly critical, let's say, of these YouTube composers and not so much of soundtrack artists like Hans Zimmer and everything. And there's a reason for that. A soundtrack is a soundtrack. It does not claim to be Arabian music or Persian music. Soundtracks are not titled this way. The problem is those videos on YouTube, they are called Persian music, Arabian music, Egyptian music. Now, I don't want to be disingenuous here. I know that they were using these terms not as literal anthropological signifiers. When they say Persian, it doesn't literally mean Persian. In their minds, Persian means vibe for cobra, desert sand. Arabian means camel spice turban. That's all these words mean to them. But you don't need a PhD.
It doesn't mean like that to me. I mean, all right. Look, I'm. That's just insane to think about, bro. Like, holy moly! Like, the more that I sit down and think about that, like, the more I'm like, holy crap! That's what these people actually think. It's just ludicrous. You know, just to think that, I don't know. That's just hurting my head just thinking that, yo, this is how people actually think. But like, unironically, it's like some people's brains are just made like that. It's like Napoleon sitting on freaking Elba, bro. There's nothing that we can do.
That's called Persian music. And you offer no more context.
Oh my gosh, bro. There's nothing that we can do.
The person is going to walk away from this video thinking that they've just heard actual Persian music. As somebody who is trying to be an educator of actual historical music and actual ethnic traditions, I constantly have to deal with people who are misinformed by channels like these coming to me saying, oh, you know, these guys have recreated ancient Arabian music. And it's like, no, they fucking haven't. They've bought a software that emulates digitally the sound of Iranian and Armenian instruments and Indian instruments, and they're throwing it together and they've called it ancient Arabian. I'm not accusing them of spreading misinformation.
Yeah, it's like AI emulating, or someone taking a picture of a like a already taken picture, like my portrait right there of Queen Elizabeth II, right? Like that's not the original portrait, right? Like that's not the original picture that, you know, that person, whoever took that picture took, right? You know, that's just a copy of it, right? Now, you know, it looks nice. It does look nice, right? But it's not the original. So I can't come on here and say, oh, I have the original picture of, you know, Queen Elizabeth II when she was at her coronation becoming the queen, you know. Like, no, that's just simply a, you know, emulation of it. So, yeah, I get it.
Willfully, or that they have bad intentions. All that I'm accusing them of is of being extremely careless and spreading misinformation through carelessness. Please understand, I am not criticizing them for having created Orientalist music. It is absolutely fine. It is their choice. It is a valid form of artistic expression. Now, it is a bunch of lazy stereotypes that are borderline offensive, but art is art. It is a valid form of expression. If that's the one that they were inspired by, they have every right to go for that. It just boggles my mind that in the 10 years that some of those videos amassed 15 million views, 15 million views, not once did it occur to them that we are using the name of other cultures whose music we know nothing about, that we haven't even studied. Maybe we should be slightly responsible on some level. Maybe we should just have like a sentence somewhere in the description clarifying that we don't actually know anything about the actual Middle Eastern music. Because they're very thorough in their descriptions when it comes to listing old softwares that they use. Oh, they're very thorough about that. But a single sentence of, you know, we don't actually know what Middle Eastern music sounds like, this is not literally Middle Eastern music, that never even crossed their minds in the process of gaining upwards of 15 million views. I'm not saying they should have changed the title or even changed the music or removed the view, just a sentence in the description. And they could not be bothered to even do that much, which leads me to two conclusions. Either these guys actually think that they've written actual Middle Eastern music, or more likely, and I think that's the more likely answer, they never cared. We really should not be surprised that taking into consideration the misrepresentation of those cultures never once crossed the minds of those musicians, because you look at the titles, things like Desert Prince, Princess of Persia, Cobras in the Sand. That's what a Swedish 4-year-old's idea of Middle Eastern culture is. I'm not surprised that it never occurred to those guys not to misrepresent the anthropological reality of the Middle East, because as far as they care, the Middle East isn't an actual anthropological reality made up of actual people and actual cultures who are every bit as tangible as the Scots and the Dutch being actual people and actual cultures. To them, the Middle East is like Narnia or Middle Earth. It's some abstract, exotic other that exists for them to fantasize and fetishize in an exoticized manner. It never occurred to them that Iranians and Arabs are actual people and they have actual instruments and an actual musical tradition, and maybe if we're going to use their names, maybe we should do so with some amount of responsibility. Somebody whose idea of Middle Eastern cultures amounts to desert in the sand and desert prince and bazaar merchants, that's exactly how you would expect them to treat the Middle East. Based on the comments that these videos have received, we can see that the vast majority of people who have listened to this have no idea what they've actually been listening to. The first example of Arabian and Middle Eastern music available on the internet to most people is neither Arabian nor Middle Eastern music, but rather a bunch of lazy cliches and stereotypes cobbled together using softwares, and no understanding whatsoever or effort put into actually understanding the actual music theory. And here we get to how Orientalism did Westerners dirty. For decades, Western audiences have been robbed of the possibility of experiencing one of the richest regions of the world in terms of cultural diversity. Architecture-wise, literature-wise, language-wise, clothing-wise, history-wise, and music-wise. I have shown that picture many times to Westerners, and they say, "What is that?" And I tell them, that is historical Iranian armor of the elite soldiers of the Sasanian Empire. And they go, "Holy shit, this looks amazing. Why don't we ever get that in our representations of Eastern media?" Yeah, you could. You could get that. But the problem is Orientalism won't let you. You could see the incredibly diverse clothings that the Ottomans, the Safavids, the Achaemenids, and all those diverse civilizations throughout the 5,000 years of Middle Eastern history have had. Or you could just be given the same slop repeatedly. Orientalism deciding for you that, Western audiences will be confused if they don't have turbans and scimitars, so just give them the same repetitive, stereotypical armors and clothing over and over again. I will die on the hill that Orientalism has done Western audiences dirty. It has robbed them of so many incredible soundscapes, traditional instruments, modes, melodies, this entire world, this entire treasure trove of amazing aesthetics lies out there. But Western media keeps robbing them of that possibility for no reason other than taking for granted that they're too stupid to be able to absorb anything else. A common comment that I get often is people saying Western audiences are not ready for non-Orientalist music. Orientalist music is palatable to the Western ear, and therefore that's all we can expect the Westerners to enjoy. That is completely false in my experience. In my experience, half of my subscriber base is from the West, and they absolutely adore the Middle Eastern music that I produce. A comment that I get very often by Westerners who discover my epic Iranian playlist is, "Holy shit, I never heard that. I never heard those sounds. I never heard those instruments. I never heard those modes. This sounds completely different." Western audiences crave and thirst for authentic representations of other cultures, because the moment you authentically decide to represent other cultures, you unlock things that are new from the Western perspective. See, Orientalism is the norm, and this is why I think Orientalism is absolutely horrendous. It's not just insulting to us Easterners. More than anybody, it is insulting to Westerners, because it takes Westerners for idiots, and so doing, for the past 100 years, Westerners have consistently been robbed and deprived of actual representations of the East, actual anthropological realities that are far deeper, far more nuanced, far more layered than this fucking surface bullshit of tropes and stereotypes cobbled together. Comparatively, look at what it looks like when you treat those cultures as actual cultures and not just a bunch of stereotypes. Let's say that I want to make a piece of music about the Safavids, an Iranian dynasty who ruled in the early modern era. Well, the Safavids were Sufis. Sufis are the Islamic mystics, and in this region, they enter musical trances using rhythmical breaths. So I can use that as the basis of the music. What instruments should I use? Well, I could use the tambour, because in the Iranian plateau, the tambour is closely tied to Sufi musical practices, and I'll get a Kurdish tambour player to play it for me. But what mode to play it in? Well, Esfahan is widely seen in Iran as the royal mode that is applied to the court and imperial sounds and everything. Heard less so in folk music, but very much heard in Persian classical music. That'll give it that sort of haughty royal sound. Owen Shah Ismail, the founder of the Safavid dynasty, was a poet who wrote in an early form of the Azerbaijani language, so I could use these as lyrics for the song, his actual poetry written by himself.
Allah Allah din qaziler deyin shah manam.
And I'll add Persian lyrics because, of course, they were an Iranian dynasty, so their language of state was Persian, and I can get an actual Persian classical vocalist to sing, not with Arabic vocal techniques, not with Indian vocal techniques, but with actual Persian classical vocal techniques. And then you would have a unique soundscape that you've never heard in any Western media ever that sounds like this. Or instead, you could just have a representation of the Safavids like this. You could get to know that the Middle East has many different biomes, like northern Iran, where my people, the Mazandarani people, and our close relatives, the Gilani people, developed our own cultures in the mountains, in the forests.
It's mind-blowing that people think that Iran is freaking desert. Dude, Iran, I imagine Iran as a mountainous civilization, not really desert. Like, yeah, partial desert, here and there, yeah. But like, more so mountains, bro. Isn't like Tehran alone like 10,000 feet above sea level? So I'm not even wrong about that.
You just get the same representation of the Middle East, which is...
I never imagined this about Iran, bro. Like, that's just
Sasanian Empire.
How do people? Okay,
Persian Empire of the Sasanians.
That's just mad. Like, what?
Modern Iranian music thematically hearkening to ancient Iranian music, and it used these ancient modes and everything, and Middle Persian lyrics in the soundtrack. You would have something that sounds like this. But instead, because Western media is stubbornly Orientalist, you'll get this. Imagine soundtracks set in Turkey and Anatolia that incorporate the sound of the Turkish ashik, the Turkish bards playing their traditional bağlama. Imagine soundtracks with shots of people going through parts of Anatolia to this music.
Eyvallah pirim eyvallah, adı güzeldir güzel şah.
But instead, because Western media works the way it does, what you'll get instead is this. Imagine a Prince of Persia game that is actually rooted in Iranian culture. Imagine a Prince of Persia wearing Sasanian armor. But instead, all you're gonna get is the Prince of Persia wearing Arabic headwears. Imagine if Western media actually understood that in Iran we have our own mythology. You know how Greek mythology has its own lore, its own characters, heroes and folklore and everything? We have our own in Iran. You have the story of Zal, who was born with white hair, therefore cast up on a mountain to die there by his parents, but then he was rescued by the Simorgh, the great bird of wisdom who speaks to humans, a bird who is often sent by Ahura Mazda, the god of light, to fight against Ahriman, the god of evil. And then his son Rostam is born. Rostam, who is the Iranian Heracles, wearing that horn helmet, and he goes to Mazandaran to fight the white div, the white demons. Chances are, if you're from the West and you're watching this video, you never knew that we Iranians literally have our own mythology that is every bit as complex with its own unique creatures and everything as Greek mythology. Consider what you've been missing on. You've been missing on an entire mythology like Norse mythology, like Greek mythology, with its own creatures, its own heroes, its own stories, its own betrayals, its own tragedies, and you've been robbed of that completely by Western media. Because anytime it approaches Iran, what does it do? Fucking turbans, fucking scimitars, flying fucking carpets, magic genie in a lamp, sand, desert, camel, cobra. Why?
Yeah, bro. I try not to laugh, bro, but
media treats its audience as idiots who are closed-minded to accept anything outside of that. I think that shows how insulting Orientalism is towards the Westerners more than anyone else. Anyway, I don't have much else to say about the video. Thank you for listening to this very long analysis, and if you're interested in more of the subject, if you now realize just how dirty Orientalism did you by keeping you in the dark about musical traditions that you've never heard about, you know, go look for them. Don't just stop at these software-based things and everything, and you'll see that there's an entire treasure trove. It'll open you to the possibilities of what you could have been experiencing all this time. Goodbye.
what a long-ass video. Look, bruh, these long videos, I gotta make an announcement regarding like longer type of videos now that August is around and I gotta deal with college, so there's gonna be an announcement coming on that. Anyways, if you made it all the way here, bro, just subscribe. You 2 hours, bro? 2 hours, bro? Come on. Yeah, subscribe at that point. Okay, subscribe if you like my reactions, if you have more videos like this. You know, comment it in the comments below. Eventually I will do it. You know, my channel membership, this is a part of Members Week. What is Members Week? My channel members have their reactions done for 1 week. Everyone else gets pushed aside. Yeah, there's gonna be a bit of a change coming with how my membership is working. But anyways, link is gonna be in the description to all the perks that you get when you're a channel member, bro. I mean, it was a good video. Okay, like, yeah, thank you for watching and goodbye.